that originated from the oil crisis due to political problem, a political issue. Then the climate change was a scientific issue. Though the solution of climate change needed political consensus, that's why the IPCC and the United Nations committees have to be formed, because unless there are measures taken globally, climate change cannot be addressed. And there, the main issue came into the picture. Till that clash is there, because we do research in this area, so we know very well that who will fund the required measures to mitigate or face the climate change problem. One very ethical question has been raised. That was basically, initially people called it climate politics. Say, who has contributed to this CO2 to the atmosphere? Advanced countries, no doubt. And who are most suffering? Not necessarily advanced countries. In our locality, Sundarban areas, different islands are going below the water just due to sea level rise. But Sundarban has contributed almost zero to the CO2 addition to the atmosphere. So, somebody who is doing the crime and somebody else is suffering for that. So, there was a question, who should fund for taking measures of this to fight this climate change? Because if you want to introduce new technologies, then learning technologies in the class do not involve much money. But when you want to implement those technologies in the real life, it involves a lot of money. Like one of the concept has already come that is yet to be implemented in a full scale just because of the crisis of money is the carbon capture. The concept of carbon capture is from power plant, let the CO2 beds be emitted, or let the carbon be captured before it is combusted, so that the power generations or energy services will be maintained without using that carbon part or capturing that carbon returning back to the below the earth's surface, because carbon being in carbon form is not a problem. Carbon being in the carbon dioxide form added to the atmosphere is the problem. So if the carbon dioxide can be separated, then high pressure liquefied and then stored under the earth's surface, that's called carbon capture and sequestration, is a possible option of reducing the climate change effect. But it's a highly costly process. Who will fund it? So in the climate change discussions that came, initially that was termed as climate politics. But countries like India and others who are actually suffering but contributed much less to the India, we always come into the picture of international scenario. One of the basic reason is it's fast growing, and number two is very important aspect is our population. Our population is so high that in a democratic structure, entire world cannot deny Indian opinion. And China is no doubt, previously when I was a student, that time China was the most populous country, and rather India and China was considered to be the same source of problem. But due to some reasons now the Chinese population is lesser, Indian population is growing at a faster rate, and also the technological and economic growth is also, China has become of the order of advanced countries that we are also trying to. I'm telling, we cannot just deny that China is still much advanced than us with respect to the economic growth. Anyway, so coming back to that part, the climate politics, later on, the terminology the countries like India have forced and other many other countries have supported, that it should not be called climate politics, it should be called climate justice. Why justice? Because the crime has been done by some countries by consuming more energy or natural resources, and their rejected waste in the form of carbon dioxide has caused problem to the other countries. So we need justice, part of politics. Interestingly, when the sustainable development concept came into the picture, then it took all these issues all together. Because if we accept that the sustainable development has to be there, that means the picture or the vision given is a very rosy one. We will have our own living standard maintained, and simultaneously we will have the future generation, something will be rather the sufficient preservation will be there for the future generation. It should be, but how to do that? But once the sustainable development concept has come into the picture, then the entire world is thinking that it is encompassing everything: climate change problem, energy conservation problem, and interestingly, sustainable development problem is not only with respect to technology. It's an integrated approach, and there are three main pillars of sustainable development. We call it environmental, social, economic. Because unless something is economically viable or feasible, it will not be accepted. Main sustainability issue comes from the environmental degradation and I mean, including the climate change problem, because climate change is undoubtedly a big environmental problem, global problem, not a local environmental problem like pollution from the transport vehicles, etc., etc. It's a global problem. And then we have the so-called social problem. Unless there is a social acceptability, and within the social issues, we generally are rather, many of the people, specifically in India, are very much disgusted about the politics. But unfortunately, we cannot do away with politics, because if you have to go for the democratic process, you have to accept the good and bad both. Otherwise, you cannot leave your country decision to some autocratic people who will only do good for us. It's quite unexpected. That's why the human society is so much variations are there. There will be good people, there will be bad people, but in the leadership, you have to decide or accept through the democratic process. There is no other option. And that's why the whenever it comes to the democracy, then there is interesting part is in democracy, including the politics, is coming under the so-called social sustainable development aspect. And entire world, after the developed acceptance of the so-called sustainable development concept, how to implement it, you will find out there are 17 defined sustainable development goals for each country who became the member countries of this sustainable development path of the United Nations. What I started teaching the energy conservation in 2000, when I was concentrating only into technological aspects of energy conservation. Later on in my course development, this is such a course that is not a classical course like thermodynamics, mechanics, etc., where the subject knowledge is almost known. Only difficult problem solution is the learning aspect. Here, the subject content itself is changing every year. So interestingly, when I started with the energy conservation at 2000, that time it was only concentrated into technological issues. But later on over the year, so many issues came with respect to climate change and sustainable development at the global level. I had to include those policy issues also in the course. Because unless you understand those policy issues, how these are implemented, your technological feasibility will not also be properly assessed. For example, energy conservation, when initially it was tried to be implemented at the industry level, then obviously people were a little bit reluctant in a sense from the existing practice. If you want to switch over to change to a new practice, not only some cost is involved, but also the manpower skill has to be enhanced towards that direction. And new generation adapt to those changes much faster. But the older senior people who are at the leadership, they are very much reluctant. Why should I change this process to that for energy conservation in our country, in our factory, if I get profit out of that still right now? But energy conservation, you are not doing for your profit less or more. You are doing it for a national and, in a sense, international cause, that your natural resources must be conserved towards overall human benefit. Then, and you know that whenever the social process voluntarily is not done, you have to go through the so-called enacting laws and regulations and implementing them, and violation of laws should be punished for some strict implementation of those laws. And currently, you know that the you cannot go on emitting enough of carbon dioxide from your car just because you have money. not only carbon dioxide, other pollutants, and you cannot give the reason. I have purchased my car, I have purchased my petrol or diesel, and I am emitting with my own money. No, you have to keep your pollution control at a certain level, and unless you don't do your pollution check at regular interval and get the necessary certificate, some of you must be driving and you all know that pollution certificate is now mandatory for all moving cars, whether commercial or personal vehicle. Similarly, electricity consumption. Someone can give a reason. I want to still use some old gadgets like filament bulbs because that gives me better lighting. No, in large scale building, small scale individual they can do it because implementing those laws at the individual level is very difficult. But at transport, it is done at the individual level even. But in large building, say shopping mall, etc., are coming up with this development. And last 20 years, this has developed in a big way. So ECBC, Energy Conservation Building Code, has been introduced as law, and it's compulsory for beyond certain square feet area, whether it is a domestic building or commercial building. If it is domestic building, rules may be a little bit different and little bit feasible rather than the commercial building. But in commercial building like shopping mall or big cinema hall, etc., etc., there the energy consumption is much larger per square foot area because they have to have central AC, they have to have the so-called different gadgets, etc., etc., advertisement display. So nobody can make a large commercial space with any arbitrary amount of energy consumption rate. It has to be complying with the so-called specification of energy conservation building code. Code, that's a guideline or compulsory compliance condition what you have to make when you go for these areas. So examples of these things are that energy conservation initially started with technology development, then it came into a implementation stage at social level, and then it needs government policy, regulations, and any punishment for violations of these codes. Currently, no builder can make a large commercial or domestic building without complying with the energy conservation building code. Whatever money you have, your money is your, but you cannot destroy the social structure or other the overall human safety. Now, the sustainable development, as I have mentioned, that there we will discuss because in energy conservation initially it was I started with energy conservation only, then later on I find out with the development of these concepts, if I ignore these areas only in the name of energy conservation, I will not do justice to the students because as they will pass out and go to the industry, they will listen to more about sustainable development rather than the energy conservation, though these are highly linked. Energy conservation is a part of the overall sustainable development concept. But I must admit, and you will realize those who are interested, because our active area of research is also sustainable development, finding out both technological options and to some extent socio-economic issues. We do techno-economic analysis regularly on different options and systems. What I'm suggesting that if you just go into the area, you will find out that this sustainable development concept, energy conservation, nicely fit into. So what I will make into this course is, initially I will have certain discussions, maybe some around 10, 15 class, not 15, maybe some 10 plus classes on the different aspects of policy and how the implementation of energy conservation related to climate change and sustainable development is done globally and mostly Indian context. Because we will be expecting that we are not preparing students for US, at least in Jadavpur course. We are preparing students for the Indian context, but obviously any student should be have the global purview also. So might be many of you have learned about that particular organization. We call it Bureau of Energy Efficiency, BEE. They are now officially legalized entity or agency or organization to take measures for the energy conservation at the national level. And interestingly, BEE recommendations are mandatory for all. And there are structures how the BEE recommendations will be formed, how they will be checked or verified whether these are being followed or not. And then there are feedback continuously from the industry also what is possible or not. Because say, if I just tell that power plant efficiency must not be below 50% or 60%, technology is not available. Who can solve that problem? So we also cannot take the measures which is beyond, which is rather beyond possibility. So everything has to be very much balanced because technologists can never be, I mean, they always have to be optimum. No best is possible in technological solutions. You have to take some measures. You can meet up to certain aspect, and certain issues may not be solved because certain technologies are not available currently. So B has to be very rational towards national growth in better energy conservation, but has to be on the ground, not floating on air without any practical bias. We will initially discuss in those classes how the energy conservation policy, including overall sustainable development goal of the entire world, has included the energy conservation concept and how it is being implemented in India. Then actually we'll enter into some of the technological issues of the energy conservation, how it can be done. There the issues will be addressed is, honestly speaking, in energy conservation, in actual industry areas in this open elective class that can be discussed more relevantly. Say metallurgy students, they will go to the metal extraction process. It's an inherent part of their professional career. So the metal extraction from the ore inherently includes a process of heating or melting the raw material. Significant amount of energy is consumed, and as a result, a lot of high temperature waste flue gas is generated. If you release it to the atmosphere, that not only adds pollution, but also substantial energy added to the system by fossil fuel combustion process is getting wasted. Say if you exit some hot air at a temperature more than 1000 degrees Celsius in the metallurgical extraction process. Previously we did it. That's the part of the scientific process we described in the books. But currently the concept is coming. If we can extract some heat from that and produce work, at least I'm making better energy conservation and energy efficiency. So there are certain issues which is related to domain specific areas. Say for chemical engineers, previously there in very many of the chemical engineering processes, the ultimate exhaust fluid, maybe it water, maybe it liquid, maybe it gas, was being released at a comparatively higher temperature just to avoid the capital investment. But currently the question is being raised because the fossil fuel prices and resource consumption is so high. We have to make a justification against that particular capital investment to save that energy going as a waste. So one topic will come up as waste heat recovery. That's a very interesting topic. We will discuss in this class. That means an existing system is already there. There are certain exhaust coming out from the waste, from the system. Whether we can retrofit, add up some new technology or equipment so that that waste heat can be recovered. Question is, when you need to add something with the existing system, which is called the retrofitting, you have to have some investment cost. Is this investment cost justified against the benefit you get? Yes, you have to justify. Otherwise, industry will never accept it. Because industry, whatever the technology you use, it knows the balance sheet. So, the waste heat recovery economics is an integrated part of the technology development. Engineers can never go without economics. That part will be discussed on how the feasibility of a new option of technology in the waste heat recovery is assessed. Standard practices in industry I will discuss. There obviously I cannot go to the most advanced level where the time value of money will also be considered. Time value of money is very interesting concept because the money, say you have rupees 100 rupees right at this moment at your hand, but you are supposed to get 100 rupees 1 year later as your bill payment. These two are not same. So having money right at this moment or some later time is not of same value. It can earn interest. So obviously time value of money in industrial money flow system is very much important. And there, in addition to the technological feasibility, we have to simultaneously consider these economic issues or economic feasibility, that we call it waste recovery economics. We will discuss about energy cascading process, where multiple energy services will be combined together to get a better energy efficient system. These are technological options. And we have to justify. Just 1 minute, I have to switch on my power, otherwise the laptop is getting power. Yeah. Now laptop is charging. Fine. So then the energy cascading will be another interesting option in energy conservation. I will start that you will add up different energy services together to get an integrated system which is better efficient. System will become complex, but it will become more energy efficient. But going back to the again that example of metallurgical extraction process or chemical processing, I can just in mechanical is not here, so I'm not discussing something related to mechanical. Yeah, electrical is also not here. Anyway, so other branch I don't remember always. Anyway, so the problem is there the domain knowledge is very much important, because unless somebody knows very detailed requirement of the metallurgical extraction process or chemical processing options, you cannot add up energy conservation measures to that, because energy conservation measures adding up must not affect the basic requirement of that particular domain process, domain specific process like metal extraction or the chemical processing as you require it. So any energy conservation measures are mostly interdisciplinary. You have to have a particular domain knowledge and then applying the overall energy concept to that. And interestingly, most of the industrial energy conservation problems, as you join, you will find out there is a definite section in each of the big industries, and there is a regulation from Government of India that those industries which consume such and such value above, and some of the industries has been identified as the high priority area, like railway, power plant, uh, uh, fertilizer industry, cement industry. These are designated industries where energy conservation measures are mandatory, not because you have money you can spend. You have to take energy conservation measures. And even consuming certain energy, certain above certain value, almost all the industries are now under the purview of the energy conservation laws. And what I'm telling you regarding this class, domain specific energy conservation measures are very difficult to address in this class, because whenever I'm talking about something metal extraction process, I don't know much also. In that case, the metallurgical people may understand, the other people may not get interest. Similarly, chemical processing pinch analysis, if I go on talking about multiple heat exchanger network, we do all these works because we have to do it to some extent for as a part of our research work. I mean, and my group, there are some different groups, different people from different background has to be now in research area. Everything becomes clubbed together. But interestingly, in undergraduate level, what I've decided to teach about in this particular class is I will specifically focus on generic problems or generic approach of energy conservation. Like power generation, it's not mechanical. It's rather the basic thermodynamic based systems will be discussed a little bit, and how to find out the efficiency of better power generation. You will have an overview of that. Then the energy cascading is also an option where different energy services can be combined together. All of you might be knowing that energy storage is becoming very important, challenging problem, specifically with respect to renewable integration. And energy storage will be a little bit discussed in that viewpoint. Then, waste heat recovery will be a big part of this particular course. Every year, rather I'm teaching it from the COVID period as open elective. I don't remember, most probably it's third year running. I found out it's a mixed reaction from the class. Some students invariably find it rather beyond their existing previous background, but I don't think it's a problem. I can help them if you want to cover it up. And some students I found out very much excited to take challenge of defining new problems, and it's a very open subject. Honestly speaking, there is no textbook also available in this particular subject, so you have to depend on the classroom discussions and interactions. So what will be the content of that technological aspect? I'm keeping it open. If I find out students are more interested interacting, then I will go for more discussions of those technological options. But if I found out that the students are a little bit reluctant and they are not that much interested with those issues to learn, then obviously I can keep it. But obviously in a class with the teachers are helpless from a sense, some students are very much enthusiastic and they're interested, and our motivation should also be to encourage them. But if the majority of the class students are reluctant, then teachers also become a little bit helpless because the class smooth flow is getting affected. So based on this, I can tell you that the energy conservation class, unless you love the subject to learn new things, it will be a little bit rather not that easy flowing conventional subject for which books are available and these chapters are mentioned. Then the role of teachers become very much limited. But I think that the role of teachers should be excite your interest if I can. And then you can find out, because all these materials are available in the age of internet, everything is available. And analytically, understanding those things is the most important issue, where the information gets converted into knowledge. Because knowledge is basically that essence of linking things, but information is available on the tip of your mouse click. So, the content of the energy conservation, if I make a summary currently, initially I will start with the so-called how the problem of energy conservation emerged, then the energy scenario of the country, because we have to understand our Indian scenario and global scenario, what are the threats, etc. Then we will go into some of the policy issues, and from there we will find out the definitions of the climate change and the energy conservations, how the policies have been taken up, and then sustainable development, because now it has become, all these things have become integrated part. And then we will actually enter into some of the issues of the technological aspects of the energy conservation, where subject domain is really completely open. I mean, nothing can be said that we have covered the entire aspects of energy conservation. We will choose or pick up some of the generic areas where the common interest of different disciplines can be. And I have my limitations because I have my basic training in mechanical engineering. Then I have to start with the electrical issues understanding, and then to some extent the other domain knowledge in the area of doing work in the energy conservation. So within my limitations, I will try to take up some generic areas of energy conservation where I will try to create the subject aspects, issues, not as a notes form of thing, but in the form of, I will give the notes, no doubt, I will give a dictation. But most of the things will be analytically open-ended subject knowledge. Now, I keep the house open for any discussion queries. Do you have any queries? Otherwise, because today I generally did not start the class content in the PPT mode and the fast class. I will wait for the responses, etc. Then, obviously, after the general overview, I will go formally from the next class. No queries. Okay. If not, then during the class I will see the responses. First issue is I need some volunteers from the group. Not right now. You can put it in the. You can volunteer in our WhatsApp group. Issues I have mentioned. First issue is if one common Google mail, a group mail can be created, so that in a single click I can send this meeting link to everybody, so that during the class at least my presentation is not affected. Anybody can anytime go out and get in, no issue. I don't bother about it also. And then The second issue is determining the at least a tentative day of the week when we will have the class and the tentative time. That will be our modified schedule, just because the official schedule has given to me on Saturday and Monday is not possible, as I have understood from the WhatsApp response, that it has to be changed. So in the evening, which dates are common to everybody, not earlier than 7 p.m. Because if I have to go to JU, coming back before 7 p.m. class is not possible. So these two issues has to be decided. And lastly, regarding attendance and class material, I will have some references which are available from directly from the internet, etc. Regularly, there will be certain dictation in the class also, because there is no standard textbook still available in this subject. But still, I found out the students are not performing bad in the at least last 2 years. But it needs that you have to try to understand and explore the issues that is discussed in the class. Any question is very much welcomed, because sometimes the question from the students create a new route of thinking for a new subject like this. These are not classical subjects, these are emerging subjects. So then what else? Because if till now I have not received any response from the class, I don't think Habal.
Sir, regarding the first issue, I would volunteer for making the Google group.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. You are from which department?
Sir, my name is Devasish Nonde. I am from
Yes, I
Printing
find.
Engineering Department, UG4.
Printing. Oh,
Yes,
very
sir.
first class, first class. So printing, you are leading that particular Google group issues. Fine.
Yes,
Then
sir.
anything else? Anything else? So he has volunteered at least. Very nicely. I'm very happy. Any other queries regarding the subject topic discussions I have made?
And sir, one more thing.
Yes.
Sir, you were asking about the common time. Sir, Saturday and Sunday would be preferable.
Hmm.
But sir, these are consecutive days. So the evening time you were saying it's really good. Onwards 7 p.m. 7 p.m. onwards, sir, it is really good. Sir, Saturday is really fine. The other day, I am expecting more suggestions, sir. I am asking for one day at Saturday, 7 p.m.
Yeah. In fact, Saturday, Sunday, if it would have been convenient, being both days, but I also feel so, because 2 consecutive days means you don't have the sufficient time to digest. So if it can be with a gap of some 2 to 3 days at least, that's a better option. But my suggestion is, if you accept, I'm not forcing you, because I think that the teaching learning process is a joint venture. Unless the students are willing, I cannot teach anything. And unless I'm a little bit competent to give the subject overview, you also can't learn. Rather, you also can't get from the teacher. Learning is not restricted. Learning is always available. Materials are there, but it's not getting you are supported by the teacher. What I'm suggesting, if you admit that's possible for you, I always feel taking some more extra classes at the beginning of the semester, so that later on, when you'll be under pressure of class test and other things at the later part of the semester, then I can skip some of the classes. Rather, I can just leave it simply. So that also I'm keeping that option open, so that I'm not telling you that you have to do forcefully. So if you can offer me some, rather than 2 days, 1 days more, initially 3 to 4 weeks, then I can make the subject much advanced. Then I can drop even 1 or 2 weeks if you wish to digest those material and come back. I have a, rather than, I feel always that rather than giving more material, the quality is more important than the quantity. So whatever we discuss in the class, that you must understand, and it's not very much difficult at all, because I will not go to those issues which I discuss with respect to more related to mechanical engineering in my elective courses in mechanical and PG courses at mechanical engineering. So I will just concentrate into rather general overview and general aspects. So these things I'm keeping open, because Devashish has already opted for the making the Google, rather the group mail. That's a tremendously good help for me. I will try to today make that roll sheet. It's not done yet. I have to make the roll sheet, and next day I will take the formal attendance. And attendance has to be, I hate to take attendance in physical classes also. But as per university rule, unless I keep it, that now people are student teacher. I always believe that the most important aspect of student teacher is the mutual trust. I must try to believe the students, they are all willing to learn, and the students have to trust the teacher, at least within his capacity. He or she is trying to deliver as far as possible. If the trust is broken, then the evidence, documents, etc., we will keep, but our actual learning process will get diluted. Anyway, so I am not going to tell much on those issues because over the classes you will realize in which mode I want to teach. But if the students come forward with more intentions, more queries, more specific project problems, then I'll be much more happy because this subject is not confined within certain given textbook chapters. No textbooks available, so how the chapters can be defined. So then the issue, as Devasish has nicely initiated that, he will create the group mail, and then in the WhatsApp group, after making discussions within yourself, you propose at least 2 days and time that's open. Saturday we can keep it open, and sometimes what happens, I have some emergency problem. Problem means even in evening I have some Google Meet with international people and other things. That time I have to, maybe I have to shift little bit, or other the time or day maybe a little bit shifted. But tentatively the class will remain on Saturday. One class is fixed. Obviously, that's a good option, and maybe 7 to 8:30. Or if you wish later, I can also do that. And the other day, you make a discussion within yourself and decide it. Any other feedback? And one issue I must mention, I think that as you students are from different background, is it, I can assume that all of you have studied at least thermodynamics one course. Heat transfer may not be, I assume, but thermodynamics
Yes,
one course, everybody has studied, no?
yes, sir. We have studied chemical.
Chemical have studied. No, those who have not studied, can anybody respond that nobody has, I mean, have a single course on thermodynamics? Because thermodynamics, I will not go into the heat transfer and fluid mechanics because these are more mechanical engineering. And I know that the fluid mechanics, heat transfer is a very inherent subject of chemical engineers also. But I will try to avoid those fluid mechanics and heat transfer issues that I do much more in PG level at our elective level in mechanical engineering. But thermodynamics based common approach has to be adopted in the class, otherwise the basic subject flair will be lost. So last year I had, no, nobody is there, then I'm happy, very happy, fine. So
Sir, so in printing engineering, we didn't have any subject regarding thermodynamics.
oh my god, then a little bit problem will be there. What I'm suggesting actually, at least you study some. I will try to confine myself within this open elective within the first law of thermodynamics. The second law is little bit more involved and little bit more philosophical. Those who have studied, they know it better than better, and they can understand. But for students of printing and other students, those who have not studied the thermodynamics, I suggest at least make the energy balance equations to learn, because I may not go those issues much in deeper where the second law is involved that I do in other courses at mechanical, but I have to do little bit justifications with respect to the so-called first law. First law is basically the energy balance. So please study parallelly little bit. I will try to elaborate little bit more, understanding that thermodynamics, at least some of the subjects are not there. But this prerequisite, you are enthusiastic, I am encouraging, I will try to also cooperate. But you have to study a little bit about the first law of thermodynamics, apart from any standard books of thermodynamics. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Anything else? Any other feedback? Because I know that the chemical engineers will have no problem. I could have go much more in chemical engineering because they know the fluid mechanics, heat transfer issues also. And last year also electrical engineering was there. Substantial amount of students were there, but maybe due to large number of electives, they have now opted out with a similar course of energy conversion methods. Not similar, rather they have opted their department. So they have opted out from this energy conservation course, though I got very good response from electrical engineers. In some aspects, you will find out that electrical engineering issues will also be discussed, because these are also very important, because electrical transmission distribution is an important aspect of the overall energy conservation. Grid concept, distribution losses will be important issues. So that I will discuss, but I will try to mostly keep it confined as it is understandable from multidisciplinary approach. But undoubtedly, little bit thermodynamics knowledge will be required. So those who have not studied thermodynamics, please make just an overview of the so-called up to the first law. Second law, I will not bring much because that needs more rigorous study. Anything else? Input? No. So next day, I am requesting any volunteer, including Devashish, if you can suggest the dates and time and next class when it should be, that should come from the students' response. I will try to fix it. except Wednesday. I am just telling because Wednesday I have a, maybe I can start Wednesday after next week because I have the lab class at the up to 5:30 or so, and then after finishing that lab classes, coming back to join to the class. At least right next 2 weeks, leave it please Wednesday. Otherwise, any day, as Devashish has suggested. I mean, Saturday, Sunday is also acceptable to me. If you feel like that's convenient at the weekend, I can do it. Generally, Saturday, Sunday, I'm also not occupied in the evening unless I have some pre-fixed meeting. We can go for Saturday, Sunday, and if you wish, and in between another day, then I can make the syllabus fast progressing at the initial part by taking another 1.5 hours extra class. But later on, I will leave you when your other class tests and other things will start. Then 1 week I can completely, or 1 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks I can leave you. You can just get preparation for those class tests, etc. Okay. Any other queries? Any other feedback from the class? No. Then good night. Next class, date and time you mention. I will send the meeting link and we will join the next class formally discussion into the subject topic. And remember that when the classes will be started and PPT mode will be there, I will not be able to allow the students after 5 to 6 minutes. So entering into the class in time is your responsibility. I know difficulties are there, but you have to do it. Thank you. Good night. Bye.
Thank you, sir.